So in this series of practice problems, we are finding volume of three specific types of shapes, specifically spheres, cones, and cylinders. So for each of these, really the simplest way to set these up is to go ahead and for our first problem, for example, we're finding the volume of a cone. The simplest thing to do in this is write down your equation. You can find that in your reference materials. So you want to write down your equation, and then the values that you're given, just plug those values in. And for most of these problems, and this is true of this first one as well, it's then just a simple matter of multiplying those values out. All right. So in this case, we're given a radius of 1.9 inches, a height of 15 inches. We're going to treat pi as 3.14. Now, I will say if you're using a calculator on this, and it's fine to use a calculator on this, if you're using a calculator on this, use the button for pi. That will give you a more accurate answer. 3.14 will be fine for our purposes here. But then it's just a matter of plugging those values in. So I'm going to rewrite my equation as 1/3 times 3.14 times, my radius is 1.9, so I'm going to do 1.9 squared times the height, which is 15. All right. Now, when we're punching this into the calculator, we want to do our 1.9 squared first, because we don't want to make an error there. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do either 1 divided by 3 or 0.33333 or however you choose to key it in times 3.14 times 1.9 and then square that, because that will give you an incorrect answer. All right. We want to square this first, then I would multiply by 15 and then multiply by 3.14 or pi if you use the pi button, and then divide by 3 at the end. That's how I choose to key it into the calculator, and that's probably how you want to as well. All right, so go ahead and do that. Pause the video, punch it in, and we'll see, and we'll verify that you got the correct answer. All right, so the calculator I'm using, actually, because I'm using it on my phone, it actually did not have pi as a button. So I had to use 3.14. But I did get 56.667 cubic inches. Now, with this problem, we're asked to estimate. So in this case, we just find the value that's closest to it. If you have pi on your calculator, you might have gotten a slightly different number than this. All right, and this should make relatively logical sense. If the radius is almost 2, then the area of our circle is going to be about 12-ish, and then the height's 15. So if we divide 12 by 3 for our area of our circle divided by 3, it's going to give us about 4, and then 4 times 15, which is the height, is going to give us about 60. So that's a pretty reasonable answer as well. All right, if you get a number, and again, because you're probably going to be using a calculator on this, it's probably not a bad idea to key this in twice, just to make sure you didn't make an input error as you were punching it into your calculator. But I can't stress enough, square 1.9 first before you multiply by these other numbers. Because remember, with multiplication, it doesn't matter what order you're multiplying in. That's one of the properties of multiplication. Is you can multiply anything in any order. 4 times 3 times 2 is the same as 2 times 3 times 4. So you're going to get the same answer. So that's why it's all right to go ahead and, in this case, square your radius first, because that's a very easy input error. Because if you just say 0.33333 times 3.14 times 1.9, and then you square that, you're going to square not 1.9, but you're going to square these three values multiplied together, and that will give you the incorrect answer. All right, so for this problem, again, we're finding the volume. In this case, though, we're finding the volume of a sphere. So spheres are, in some ways, the easiest, in some ways the most challenging. They're the easiest because you actually only need one value to find the volume, and that's your radius. And we're directly given the radius in this case of 2.7 centimeters. So then it's just a matter of, and again, write down the equation from your reference material on your sheet. Don't just key the values into your calculator. Actually write your formula down, substitute your value in. That way when you're keying in to your calculator, you're not going strictly from your mental math. So 4/3, I'm going to put pi in here. Actually, I'm going to keep pi as pi. And then we're going to have 2.7 cubed. And just as we did previously, when you're keying this into the calculator, do not multiply 4/3 times pi times 2.7 and then cube it. That will give you the incorrect answer. You need to cube 2.7 first, and then multiply by pi, and then multiply by 4/3. All right, so go and pause the video, key that in, and we'll verify that you got the correct answer. All right, so once you keyed these values in, and again, the calculator I'm using on my phone does not have pi, so I'm just keying in as 3.14. You should get a number that's close to 82.41 cubic centimeters. All right, now that's, and again, you're going to see this wording in these questions. Because you're dealing with pi, which pi goes to an infinite number of decimal places, you're never going to get an exact answer that's exactly precise. Because since pi goes on infinitely, if you're multiplying by pi, whatever answer you get is also going to go on infinitely. So you're going to get where it says which measurement is closest to the volume. You're going to see that verbiage in there, and the reason you see that is because of that property of pi. So my 82.41, that's closest to the 82.45 that you see in answer choice J. Again, cube your radius first, then multiply by pi, then multiply by 4/3. It's a little bit backwards, but you want to make sure you're dealing with that exponent first in your calculator. One, because that's what your order of operations says you're supposed to do, but also as you're keying into the calculator, it's very easy, especially with the cube being the last operation, if we read it from left to right, it's really easy to make an error there. So for this problem, we are finding the volume of a cylinder. All right, so first thing we want to do obviously is we want to write down our equation from our reference material. We're going to modify this equation slightly because since we're dealing with a cylinder, the area of the base, the big B, we're actually going to substitute in the area for a circle in there. Now, they throw a curveball in this problem because they give you the radius and they sort of give you the height. So they give you a radius of 24.26 millimeters. I'm sorry, they give you a diameter of 24.26 millimeters. So remember, diameter is the span completely across. So the radius is half of that. So that's the first thing. We're going to have to divide this number by 2 to actually get our radius. They give you the height, sort of. They give you the height of 1/4, and then they tell you that this cylinder, this roll of quarters, is 40 quarters high. So it's 1.75 millimeters for the thickness of 1/4, but then we have to multiply that by 40. So we have to divide the number we're given for the diameter by 2 to get the radius, and multiply the number we're given for the thickness of the quarter by 40 in order to get those values. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and do that now. All right, so we get for our radius 12.13 millimeters, and for our height 70 millimeters. All right, and now it's just a matter of completing our formula here. Now I'm going to rewrite this as volume is, because remember our base is a circle, so I'm going to go ahead and do pi r squared times height, since we're dealing with a cylinder. All right, we want to work in this formula right here. So same formula. The only thing I've done is I've extended out this base formula for the actual base of a circle. All right, and then it's just a matter of substituting our values in. So we're going to have, volume is going to be pi, our radius is 12.13 squared, and then our height is 70. So remember, when you're keying this into the calculator, square your radius first. Do not do pi times 12.13 squared times 70, because if you key it in that way, you're not squaring 12.13, you're squaring pi times 12.13, which is going to be around 36. You're going to square that number, not 12.13, and you'll get an incorrect answer. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, do your computations, and then verify that you get the correct answer. All right, so when I keyed this into the calculator, and I keyed it in twice just to double check, I get 32,340.69. Now, you'll notice that my equal sign is it's a little wavy looking, and then what that symbol means is that it's about that number. And again, as we talked about in a previous problem, because pi goes out to an infinite number of places, you're never going to get an exactly precise answer when you're dealing with pi. And so most of the times the problems will be worded, and I believe this one is as well, which measurement is the closest. And so that's why, again, that's why they're using that verbiage.